Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be about how to grow alocasia corms, and there's lots of different ways to grow alocasia corms, but in this video, the one that I'm going to show you now is one in my experience, pretty much works. Oh my gosh, there's a cat staring at me right now and it's stressing me out. And the method that I'm going to show you in this video, I have used many times, and I'm yet to have a corm that doesn't turn into a plant. So I think that it works pretty well, and there are lots of different methods that you can use to grow alocasia corms, but I have found in my experience that this one works pretty well. So let's get into today's video. So this is the alocasia that I'm going to be repotting, and hopefully there's some corms inside, which I feel like there will be because it's been a long time since I've repotted this. And the reason I am repotting is because these lower leaves down here are quite big, as you can see. They're huge. But then its newest leaves are a lot smaller than those previous leaves. So it could be because I'm in a new house that has some different lighting, but it is getting pretty good lighting here. So I feel like it's not the case and it just wants a bigger pot size. So I'm going to take it apart and see what the roots are looking like. And I've got this size to go into, or maybe I'll just go into the same sort of size. I'm really not too sure yet. So we'll see how these roots are looking, and I'll also show you the potting method that I use for my alocasias. Okay, so I'm just going to start going through the roots, and I've got some things here to help stand this alocasia up because it's just gotten so big and top heavy that it always just wants to topple over, and I don't want that to happen, obviously. So let's see how it's all looking in here. And I really hope there is some corms in here, but I do need to repot it regardless because it just looks like it's in need of a bigger pot. And there's no real glamorous way of doing this. I think I'm just going to try and sort of yank her out. How does everyone feel about cats? Because I want to get a cat. I've owned cats in the past. I've owned 3. I had Aubrey, Drake, and Graham. And I don't have them anymore because they were Persian cats, and Persian cats are just like predestined for like every health condition possible. So they did not live very long, which is really sad because they were the best. So I would like to get another cat. I'm definitely more of a cat person. Not that I don't like dogs, but I don't know, I just prefer them. All right, now I always put leca at the bottom of my alocasias, so I'm just going to reuse those for the new pot. I'm just going to place them aside. Whenever I repot a plant, I like to not disturb any of the root system, but in order to get the corms out, we need to do that. So I'm going to be pretty gentle and probably take a long time doing it because I still want the plant to not experience a lot of shock and hopefully just continue growing like nothing happened when I repot it. And I can already see one corm, so that's exciting. And my favorite thing about variegated Frydek corms is the corms are also variegated, which is so cute. So look how big that one is as well. It's so cool. So 1 currently, and let's see how many more we get. They do normally like to hang out pretty close to the main stem. So of course they're very embedded in there. That's okay. We will uncover hopefully all of them and start to grow them. Here is another one. So we've got 2 so far. And 3. 4. 5. 6. 'So we found 6 corms in here, which is great. That's 6 little plants that we're going to get. And I really want to bury this pretty deep because from about here to here is stem, and it's just going to make it a little bit more sturdy, and this part of the stem will start to get a lot more roots if I bury that into a pot. But because it's quite long, it's not really going to fit in this pot size anymore, so I think I will have to go up a pot size, which is fine. And there's a bit of stem just down the bottom that doesn't have any roots, and it's just stem. So I'm going to cut that particular bit off just to make it slightly shorter, and then I will pot it up, and I'll show you how I pot up all of my alocasias, because I do a different watering sort of method with all of my alocasias as well. So I'll explain that a little bit more. And I do have a video on that if you want to see sort of what I'm talking about a little bit more in depth and why. So let's repot this guy, and then I'm going to show you how to grow these alocasia corms. This is the pot size that I'm going into, and I'm a bit sad about it because it's not a clear pot, and I use clear pots for all my plants because I like to keep an eye on how their root system is going. So I won't be able to do that in this one, which it's not concerning, but I just want to know, I'm nosy. But let's get into potting it up, and I'm not going to deal with any of this mess at the moment because I can't be bothered. So first step is to fill the bottom of the pot with a soil alternative, so like leca, perlite, something else, I don't know, leca or perlite. I use Mab Grow actually, that's one that I've used in the past. That works pretty well. But I don't have any at the moment, but I've got leca, so that's what we're using. I'm going to reuse all the leca from the previous pot, and I'll probably need to add a little bit more because you want it to sort of form a layer maybe about that big, so like 1 or 2 centimeters. And I'll put that in first. So what I'm sort of looking at is making sure that it's a nice even level on the bottom of the pot. And at the moment I can see a couple of spaces where there isn't any leca, and I can see the black showing from the bottom of the pot, which means that I need to add just a little bit more. Okay, I think I might add the rest of this. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then the next step is to do a layer of damp sphagnum moss, and I'm going to try and reuse some of it from the previous pot. Oh, I actually just found another corm. So we've got, how many did I say? 6, 7? I've got 7 now. Okay, that's pretty cute. Good thing we went through the previous soil mixture because that's where it was hiding. It was just hanging out in some of the previous sphagnum moss. So if you're repotting an alocasia, always check the previous substrate to see if there's any little surprises. That is another thin layer, and the rest of it now, so if I can just kind of show you where it's up to, which is about here. So we've just got a bit of leca, a bit of damp sphagnum moss, and then the rest up until we do a top layer of sphagnum moss is going to be our plant and the potting soil that we're going to use, which is an Aroad mix. So let's place this large lady in here. And I'm pretty happy with how much of the plant is submerged, because we obviously don't want like the leaves to be very much buried into the substrate, and it's looking pretty good like that. So I'm just going to grab my substrate and start filling it up. So all of the substrate is in the pot now, and the very last thing to do is to add another layer of damp sphagnum moss. And the reason for that one is it's going to sort of act like a method for knowing when your plant needs to be watered. Okay, so it's all potted, and it does need a little bit of styling because it looks crazy right now. And I might just quickly do that and then show you how much better it looks. Okay, this is how it looks after I placed one of these like stem holders. I'm not sure if you've ever seen them online, but it basically comes with a acrylic stick and then this sort of shaped thing that you place the stems inside. And the one that's on the plant right now is much bigger, so it's going to hold the heavier stems up. And this is how much more organized and compact it looks. So much better. So while I was tidying up all the soil everywhere, I found another 2 corms. So that is 9. So let me just count that. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 corms, which is a lot. And there always is a lot of corms on that plant because it's very mature. So it's just like a big mother that is ready to have lots of babies, which is great for me. So a couple of things that you are going to need to grow your alocasia corms is some glass jars. It doesn't really matter what size they are. I've used 2 sizes in the past, but pretty small generally, just because you only really want it to sort of establish a little bit of a root system, and then you're going to transfer it to whatever potting soil that you choose to use. So it doesn't need to be a gigantic glass jar unless you decide that you want to grow your corm in sphagnum moss forever. So next thing that you're going to need is damp sphagnum moss, which is going to go inside of your jars. So the other thing that is crucial for growing alocasia corms is having a really bright and warm environment. So what I like to do is provide a heat mat and also a grow light. So none of my alocasias grow in natural sunlight, and the reason I do this is because weather is always changing. So if you sit your corm in a glass jar on your windowsill, it will probably get some roots and start to grow, but because weather is always changing and it's not consistent with the amount of sunlight and temperature, it may take a little bit longer. So with a heat mat and a grow light, it's always going to be that optimum temperature, and you've got control over the lighting. So it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get a root system in generally a quicker time. Let's do this now. And I like to put a couple of corms together in a glass jar. You don't have to do that. You can put just 1 corm per jar if you don't want to fiddle around with the root system later. So this is one that I've done at an earlier time, and it's got 2 corms placed in there together, and there is a lot of a root system. So when I need to separate these, it's going to be a little bit of a nightmare, but it will come out in one piece eventually. It just takes a lot longer than if you were to put 1 corm per jar. But I also don't have a lot of room on my heat mat. It's relatively small, so I just like to keep them pretty compact in there. So the thing that you also need to be very consistent in doing is checking how moist the sphagnum moss in your jar is. So the reason we use a jar with a lid is it's going to just sort of encapsulate all of that good humidity from the damp sphagnum moss. But you also want to make sure that your sphagnum moss is not drying out, because the humidity that's created from the damp sphagnum moss is really going to help these corms get some roots. So I make the sphagnum moss quite damp, to the point where you would be able to see a little tiny sort of collection of water at the bottom. that's great. It's not like the corm is submerged in water and is going to rot. It's just going to be very gently sitting on the top of the sphagnum moss and just getting a lot of good heat and humidity, and it will start to get roots in no time. So I found that after pretty much a week or two, it was already starting to get roots on all of my corms that I've grown. So it's pretty quick. So I'm just going to fill these up now, and then I'll show you which way you need to put the corms into your sphagnum moss. The jars are all ready to go, and when you put your corms into the sphagnum moss, it's important to know which way the corms need to sit. So when you take out your corm, it might have a little bit of a tail like this. So I'll show you a bit closer. It'll have a little bit of a tail, and that tail is going to go in first. And you can actually break it off because it's not actually going to form any roots from this little tail. It comes out from the corm itself. So just to minimize the chance of it rotting, I always take them off. And sometimes your corm will come out and it won't be very obvious what it has. So with this one in particular, I don't always do this with my corms, but it actually has a sort of like a little layer, a little crust around it that we can actually peel off. So I'm going to do that for this one just to make it a little bit more obvious on which way I need to actually plant it into the sphagnum moss. And I'll be able to show you the cute little variegation on it as well, which is my favorite part. I have seen some videos online of people growing alocasia corms, and they always take off this outer layer before placing it in whatever method or substrate they're going to grow it in. And you don't have to. It might make it slightly quicker, but it is time consuming. And I've done experiments before where I've placed them in the exact same jar and I've kept this outer layer, and some of them I've taken off and they all pretty much did the same thing. Maybe the ones without the layer was like slightly quicker, but it wasn't like substantially faster where I would say, yes, you definitely need to do that. So yeah, I'm still going with this one at the moment. And when you are taking it off, there's a chance that you can damage the corm as well. So there's also that to sort of keep in mind. Okay, so we've taken the outer layer off, and that's what it looks like now. And this one you can't see very well, but it's got some parts that are green and then other parts that are white. So it is very cutely variegated. And what I would like to show you is, you see how this side is a little bit more pointy, and if I turn it around, this side isn't. Now, it may not look very obvious on camera, but it is pretty obvious when you're looking at it in real life. So I might show it a little bit better. But the side that isn't as pointy is the side that's going to be placed down. So this is where your new growth will come from. And then this is where that tail that I was showing you earlier would have been if it didn't break off. So to plant them, all I'm doing is nestling it in there just like this. So it's not really submerged in the substrate, it's kind of just hanging out just on top, and that's all that it needs because the jar has so much humidity and the substrate will always be really wet, so it will definitely start to get some roots. But the key thing with this, I think, is to just always make sure that you're checking on it. So check on it like it's a little newborn baby and have a look at it every single day, a few times a day, however much you want. Just keep an eye on it to make sure that it is getting enough humidity and the substrate's not too wet and it looks like it's starting to rot. I wouldn't move the corms around too much, but if you're feeling like it's looking a little bit questionable, just pick it up and make sure that it's not rotting. But I really don't think that it will. It would take a lot for it to rot, I think. And this corm is very interesting looking because there's no green on it pretty much whatsoever. It's like completely white, which is weird. I've never had a corm look like this before. That's so strange. Yeah, it's completely white. Very weird. Looks like a little clove of garlic or something. Well, I'm keen to see what that one looks like when it starts to grow. And I'm only taking the outer layer of these three, because if you can see the difference in these ones, just move my face. If you can see the difference, you see how this one doesn't really look like it has a big outer layer. It's still showing a lot of green, but then this one is like completely brown. It seems to be the ones that disconnected from that little tail. It's almost like it grows from the main stem of those little tails and then it breaks off, forms this outer layer and then starts to grow into a plant. I don't know, that's just what I'm thinking, because the only ones that have broken off and don't have the little tail are the ones that have this really weird layer around it. So I don't know, that's what I'm guessing. What I might do actually is the three in here had that shell taken off it. So I'm going to place one in there with it that hasn't had the shell taken off. So I'm just going to take off its little tail and place it in as well. And it might be a nice experiment to show again that it doesn't matter too much if you take it on or off. And I'm going to place the rest in there. So there's two in here that are a little bit bigger and then these ones are smaller. So I'll put the two bigger ones in here and the three smaller ones in there. All of them are in their little jars. And again, this is how they're just sitting inside, just on top. And I'm going to place the lids on. And then I'm going to place it on the heat mat under a grow light, and I'll show you in another clip what they look like. They will be in a sort of like a greenhouse box, but it's only because I have other plants growing in that, and for them to all sit on the heat mat, they need to go inside that box. So ignore the box, it has nothing to do with it, but it's on a heat mat with a grow light, which is what you want. And the only thing is that you need to consider with these lids is the grow light obviously won't be able to get through the lid. So once it's been in there for maybe a week or two, it is a good idea to take off the lid occasionally just so it can get some light. But the humidity will be enough to start getting a root system on there. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you found it helpful. And I will probably post some updates on those corms on my Instagram, so be sure to check that out if you do want to see how they are growing. And I may or may not make a update video sort of down the track. It's something that I do very frequently, so to me it's not exciting, but maybe it is to you, so let me know in the comments. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.